My name is Evelyn Parker. I am 68 years old, and until recently, I believed I understood exactly how my family worked. That belief ended the moment I opened an email from my daughter-in-law. The subject line read like a business transaction. Invoice for Daniel birthday event. Attached was a detailed bill for $3,000. A private yacht party along the Oregon coast. Catering, music, decorations, every detail carefully planned and itemized. At first, I thought it had been sent by mistake. So I opened the document. Slowly. Carefully. Line by line. And then I reached the guest list. My name was not on it. They had planned an entire luxury celebration. They had calculated every expense. They had divided the cost among family. But they had not included me. I did not cry. I did not call. I did not ask for an explanation. Instead, I opened my banking app, typed in the amount, and sent exactly $1. In the memo line, I wrote 5 simple words. I am not on board. Then I set my phone down and sat in silence, staring out at the gray ocean beyond my kitchen window. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. It was not anger. It was not even hurt. It was clarity. And that $1 was not a reaction. It was the beginning of something they never saw coming. 8 years ago, I buried my husband, Richard. After that, life became quieter. Smaller in some ways, but also more honest. I learned to appreciate slow mornings. A fresh cup of coffee brewed just right. The smell of something baking in the oven. The kind of silence that does not feel empty, but peaceful. I did not need much to feel content. At least, that is what I told myself. My son Daniel used to visit often back then. He would sit at this same kitchen table, talking about work, about his plans, about the future he was building. Then he met Vanessa. She was polished, ambitious, always moving toward something bigger. A better job. A better house. A better image. At first, I admired her drive. Over time, I started noticing something else. Everything in their life had a cost. And somehow, I was always the one quietly covering part of it. It began with small things. A grocery subscription here. A shared streaming account there. A gas card for emergencies. Nothing felt unreasonable on its own. That is how it adds up. Like leaving a faucet dripping. One drop at a time, until you realize the water has been running for years. And somewhere along the way, something else started slipping too. My birthday. The first year they forgot, Daniel called the next day, apologizing, blaming a busy schedule. I told him it was fine. The second year, there was a short text message. By the third year, there was nothing at all. I stopped expecting it. Not because it did not matter, but because I had learned what it meant when people consistently forget something that should never be forgotten. Still, I never complained. I stayed quiet. And that silence slowly became the space where they stopped seeing me at all. I went back to that email later that afternoon. Not because I needed to. I had already seen enough. But something in me wanted to understand just how far things had gone. The message itself was short. No greeting. No warmth. Just a brief explanation that Daniel had been under a lot of stress and deserved something special this year. As if that justified everything that followed. The invoice was precise. Clean. Almost impressive in its organization. $3,000 broken down into neat categories. Private yacht rental along the coastline. Catered seafood dinner. A professional DJ brought in from out of town. Custom decorations designed to match a nautical theme. Every detail had been carefully chosen. Thought through. Perfectly executed. I could almost picture it. The music. The laughter. The polished version of their life on display for everyone else to admire. And then I scrolled down again to the guest list. I read every name slowly. Friends. Colleagues. Neighbors. Even people I barely recognized. But not mine. Not Evelyn Parker. I checked a second time, just to be sure I had not missed it. I had not. That was the moment everything became clear. This was not a misunderstanding. It was not a mistake. It was a decision. They had decided I was necessary to fund the event, but not important enough to attend it. And somehow, that realization did not feel loud or dramatic. It felt quiet. Cold. Like stepping outside on a winter morning and realizing the air is sharper than you expected. For years, I had told myself I was helping. Supporting. Being a good mother. But sitting there at my kitchen table, staring at that list, I finally understood the truth. I was not included in their life. I was financing it. I did not act right away. That might be the part most people would not understand. There was no dramatic reaction. No angry message. No late-night phone call demanding an explanation. I simply sat there for a while, letting the truth settle into place. Then I picked up my phone. The transfer itself took less than a minute. $1. Sent directly to the account listed on the invoice. In the memo line, I typed exactly what I meant. I am not on board. It was not meant to be clever. It was meant to be final. But that was only the surface. The real work began later that evening. I turned on the small desk lamp in my home office and opened my laptop. For years, I had managed my finances carefully. Old habits from my bookkeeping days never really leave you. And as I started reviewing my accounts, I saw everything more clearly than ever before. Weekly grocery deliveries charged to my card. Streaming subscriptions with multiple profiles I did not even use. A gas card that had quietly turned into a daily convenience instead of an emergency backup. An authorized credit card being used for regular shopping, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. None of it had seemed alarming on its own. That is how boundaries disappear. Not all at once, but gradually, until there is nothing left. I went through each account one by one. Passwords were changed. Access was removed. Verification codes were redirected to my phone. The authorized card was canceled without hesitation. No announcements. No warnings. Just quiet decisions. When I was done, I sent a single message to the family group chat. All accounts under my name are now for my personal use only. Please make other arrangements. I placed my phone face down on the desk and turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, everything felt still. Not because nothing had happened, but because something finally had. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was anxious. Because I already knew what was coming. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching the pale morning light stretch across the water. For a few minutes, everything was quiet. Then my phone started buzzing. One message turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. By the time I sat down at the table, the screen was filled. The first one was from Vanessa. What is going on? My card just got declined at the store. The next message came seconds later. This is unacceptable. Fix it immediately. Then Daniel. Mom, my gas card is not working. I am at the station right now. I had to pay out of pocket. Another message. Did something happen with your accounts? Can you check? I read each message slowly, taking my time. Not one of them asked how I was doing. Not one of them mentioned the email. Or the invoice. Or my birthday. Just inconvenience. Just disruption. It was almost impressive how quickly everything became urgent once it affected them. The phone continued vibrating against the table, each notification louder than the last. I turned it over and let it ring. Instead, I carried my coffee into the sunroom and began repotting a set of hibiscus plants I had been meaning to take care of for weeks. The soil was cool and steady beneath my hands. Outside, the world moved at its usual pace. Inside, something had already shifted. For years, I had been the quiet support system holding everything together. And now, for the first time, they were experiencing what it felt like without it. I did not rush to fix anything. I simply let the silence answer for me. He did not call before coming over. Daniel never used to do that. But then again, Daniel used to knock, too. The front door opened without warning just before noon, followed by the familiar sound of his footsteps moving quickly across the floor. "Mom, what is going on?" he said, his voice already tense before he even reached the kitchen. I did not turn around right away. I finished rinsing the soil from my hands, dried them slowly, and then took a seat at the table. Only then did I look at him. His face was flushed, his posture tight, keys still clenched in his hand like he had rushed straight over. "Vanessa is at the store and her card just got declined in front of everyone," he said. "And I had to pay cash for gas this morning." "What did you do?" There was no greeting. No pause. Just demand. I folded my hands on the table, keeping my voice calm. "I adjusted my accounts, Daniel." He let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. "Over what?" "A missed birthday." "You are seriously shutting everything down over that?" I held his gaze. "You sent me a bill for $3,000, I said quietly. "For a party I was not invited to." For a moment, he looked caught off guard. "That was a mistake," he replied quickly. "Vanessa must have forgotten to add your name. You know she has been busy." I did not respond right away. Because we both knew that was not true. Vanessa did not forget details like that. Not when they mattered. Daniel shifted his weight, his tone growing more impatient. "You are making this a bigger issue than it is. We can sort it out later. Just turn everything back on." There it was. Not an apology. Not even an acknowledgement. Just an expectation that I would fix it. I leaned back slightly in my chair. "No, Daniel," I said. "The accounts stay as they are." The words landed heavier than I expected. He stared at me, searching for the version of me that would eventually give in. But that version was no longer sitting across from him. The fallout did not take long. By the next afternoon, the consequences had already begun to surface in ways Vanessa could not ignore. The yacht company sent out an automated notice to everyone on the original email thread. The deposit had not gone through. The reservation was at risk. There was a deadline. A strict one. Without full payment, the booking would be cancelled. I did not need to be there to imagine what happened next. Vanessa, refreshing her screen again and again, trying to push the charge through. Daniel pacing, checking his phone, waiting for a confirmation that never came. Because the block was complete. And it held. That evening, my phone lit up again. This time, the tone had shifted. "You are putting us in a terrible position," Vanessa wrote. "This event is important. People are expecting it. Not we would like to talk. Not we made a mistake. Just pressure. Just expectation." I read the message once, then set my phone aside. I did not respond. A few hours later, I heard the rest through a neighbor who always seemed to know more than she should. The party had been cancelled. Too late to secure another boat. Too expensive to recover the deposit. Too public to hide. Everything Vanessa had spent weeks planning, the image she had carefully constructed, had unraveled in a single afternoon. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. Later that night, a post appeared online. A simple black background with a single sentence. Some people will destroy their own family out of jealousy. I saw it. I read it. And then I closed the app. Because I understood something they did not. When people rely on an illusion, it only takes one truth to bring it down. And I had already told mine. By the next morning, the story had already started to travel. Not directly from me. From Vanessa. She had begun explaining the situation to anyone who would listen. Friends, acquaintances, even extended family. But explanations have a way of shifting depending on who is telling them. By the time it reached my sister-in-law, Carol, the version she heard was simple. I had refused to support my own son. I had ruined an important event out of spite. She called me that afternoon, her voice careful, measured. Evelyn, I just wanted to understand what happened, she said gently. This does not sound like you. I appreciated that. Not because she was taking sides, but because she was asking. So I told her the truth. No exaggeration. No emotion layered on top. Just the facts. They sent me a $3,000 invoice for a party I was not invited to. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her processing it. I followed up with a simple email. The invoice. The guest list. Nothing more. No commentary. No defense. Just evidence. Sometimes, that is all the truth needs. Later that evening, Carol sent a short message back. I understand now. That was it. No drama. No debate. And within a matter of days, the tone around town shifted. Because once people see the full picture, it becomes very difficult to maintain a false one. Vanessa had tried to control the narrative. But the truth had a way of quietly finding its own path. And this time, it did not need my voice to be heard. 2 days later, they came together. Daniel did not arrive alone this time. Vanessa stepped in first, her posture stiff, her expression carefully controlled. Daniel followed a step behind, quieter than before. I opened the door, then stepped aside. We did not sit down. Something about the moment did not call for comfort. We need to resolve this, Vanessa said, her tone steady but sharp. This situation is getting out of control. I leaned lightly against the kitchen doorway, waiting. She continued. The cancelled event has already affected our standing with people we work with. And now we are dealing with additional financial pressure because of it. There it was again. Not an apology. A consequence. Daniel shifted slightly, avoiding my eyes. We just need things to go back to normal, he added. Just until we get everything sorted out. I studied both of them for a moment. Normal. The word sounded almost foreign now. There is nothing to resolve, I said calmly. My accounts are no longer shared. Vanessa let out a short breath, something between frustration and disbelief. You are putting this entire family in a difficult position, she said. We have responsibilities. Payments. Commitments. I nodded once. And those are yours to manage. Her expression hardened. If you continue like this, she said slowly, we will have to reconsider how much contact we have going forward. The meaning was clear. No visits. No holidays. No grandchildren. For a moment, the room was completely still. I turned to Daniel. Are you comfortable with that decision? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. He looked down, then away. We do not have many options, Mom, he said. I held his gaze for a moment longer. Then I walked to the front door and opened it. Leave, I said. No raised voice. No argument. Just a boundary. They walked out without another word. And when the door closed, Behind them, something settled into place. Not loss. Not anger. Something steadier than that. Control. The house felt different after they left. Not empty. Just quieter in a way I had not experienced in years. I stood there for a moment, listening. No tension. No expectation. No sense that something was about to be asked of me. Just silence. Later that afternoon, I called a locksmith. It was a simple, practical decision. Daniel had kept a spare key for years, and I had asked for it back more than once without success. By evening, every lock had been changed. For the first time in a long time, I knew that my space was entirely my own. The next few days passed without interruption. No calls. No messages. No sudden demands disguised as emergencies. At first, it felt unfamiliar. Then it started to feel peaceful. I filled my time with things I had quietly put aside. Long walks along the coastline. Coffee with an old friend I had not seen in years. An afternoon spent browsing a small bookstore downtown, without checking my phone every few minutes. Even my finances looked different. For the first time in a long while, the numbers made sense. No unexplained charges. No quiet leaks. Just stability. It was not about the money itself. It was about what the money represented. Energy. Time. Choice. And without the constant pull from someone else, I began to notice something unexpected. I felt lighter. Not because I had removed people from my life, but because I had finally removed the weight they had been placing on it. And that kind of quiet is not lonely. It is freeing. It did not take long for reality to catch up with them. When support disappears, what remains becomes very clear. A few weeks passed before I heard anything again. Not through a call. Not through a message. Through a handwritten note left in my mailbox. I recognized Daniel's writing immediately. It was shorter than I expected. He said things had been stressful lately. That expenses had become harder to manage. That he and Vanessa had been arguing more than usual. He wrote that he missed how things used to be. That word again. Used to be. I read the note twice, then folded it carefully and set it aside. There was no apology in it. Not a real one. No acknowledgement of what had happened. No ownership of the choices that led them there. Just discomfort. Just the consequences of a lifestyle that had depended on something that was no longer available. It reminded me of something simple. When someone is used to leaning on you, the moment you step away feels like a loss to them. Even if all you did was stand still. I did not respond. Not out of anger. But because I understood something important. If I answered too quickly, I would be solving a problem they had not yet fully faced. And some lessons only take hold when there is no one left to soften them. So I let the silence remain. Not as punishment. But as space. Space for them to understand what had changed. And why. Almost 2 months passed before Daniel reached out again. This time, it was a message. Short. Direct. He asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. A small cafe near the waterfront we used to visit years ago. I agreed. But I set 2 conditions. Vanessa would not be there. And we would not discuss money. When I arrived, he was already seated by the window, staring out at the water. He looked different. Tired. Less polished. As if something in his routine had shifted in ways he could not easily control. He stood up when he saw me. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he said quietly. I nodded and took my seat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled slowly. "I want to apologize," he said. I did not interrupt. "Not about the accounts," he added quickly. "But about how we treated you. That got my attention." He continued. We got used to you always being there. Always helping. And we stopped thinking about what that actually meant. I watched him carefully. This was not rushed. Not defensive. Just honest in a way I had not heard before. You were right, he said. About the party. About everything. There was no excuse this time. No attempt to redirect. Just acknowledgement. It was never just about the birthday, I replied gently. It was about being seen. He nodded. I know that now. He reached across the table for a brief moment, then pulled his hand back, unsure. We have been trying to figure things out, he said. Vanessa and I started talking to someone. Counseling. That did not surprise me. Pressure reveals cracks that comfort can hide. We talked for a while after that. Not about the past in detail. Not about finances. Just small things. The weather. The boats moving across the water. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was sitting across from my son again. Not someone managing a situation. Just Daniel. Things did not suddenly become perfect after that conversation. That was never the goal. What changed was something quieter, but far more important. The structure of our relationship. Daniel started visiting once a month. Alone. No rushed conversations. No underlying tension about finances. No subtle expectations hidden beneath casual words. Sometimes we would walk along the shoreline, letting the rhythm of the waves fill the spaces between us. Other times, we would spend the afternoon in the garden, working side by side without needing to say much at all. And for the first time in years, money was no longer part of the conversation. Not hinted at. Not implied. Just gone. Vanessa kept her distance. On holidays, I would receive a short message. Polite. Measured. Carefully worded. It was not warm. But it was respectful. And for now, that was enough. The grandchildren still came to visit. Not as part of an arrangement. Not as leverage. Just because they wanted to be there. I did not try to rebuild everything that had been lost. Some things are not meant to return to what they were. Instead, I focused on what was real now. Clear boundaries. Honest conversations. And a connection that no longer depended on what I could provide. It was not the same relationship we once had. But in many ways, it was finally a healthier one. When my next birthday came around, I did not expect anything different. I had already made peace with what the past had shown me. That morning, I woke up early, just like I always do. The house was quiet. The air felt light. The kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly where you stand in your own life. I made my coffee. I opened the windows. I let the day begin slowly. Then, around 8, there was a knock at the door. Not a message. Not a call. A knock. When I opened it, Daniel was standing there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers and a simple cake in a plain white box. Nothing extravagant. Nothing designed to impress anyone. Just effort. Just intention. Happy birthday, Mom, he said. No excuses. No explanations. Just presence. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where so many conversations had once felt one-sided. This time, it felt different. Balanced. Real. As I blew out the single candle on that cake, I realized something I had not fully understood before. That $1 I sent months ago was never about rejecting them. It was about choosing myself. About drawing a line where one had never existed. Because boundaries are not punishments. They are clarity. They are the quiet decision to stop giving more than you are receiving. I did not lose my family. I simply stopped losing myself in the process of trying to keep them. And if you have ever felt taken for granted by the people you care about, maybe you understand. Sometimes, the smallest decision can change everything. So tell me, what would you have done?